Hello. Hi there. Today is January the 6th, 2025. So what I'm going to do today is make the rest of the shelf videos. I'm going to make shelf number 5, 6, 7, and 8. And if you're watching this on YouTube and you're saying, wow, I can watch all of those shelf videos, no, you can't. All of those videos are being held on Patreon. And if you would like to see them right now, you can support my channel, Grant Loves Books, on Patreon for a very small amount of money per month. Try to think that it's going to a good cause. A lot of people have asked me, why do you make videos talking about books that nobody's heard of? It's because one day I'm going to be dead, and I think my biggest regret when I die is that I'm going to think, God, I really wish that I had have recommended that book to more people. Because I love literature, I love reading, and I've been quite lucky that I've been able to explore and discover a lot of literature that I think most people just are unaware that it's existing. So that's why I've made the channel, to promote literature that I love. If you like what I'm doing here and you want some more of it, it's over on Patreon. I'm giving quite a lot more over there. Early access, I guess, is the main thing, but also the weekly blog I think is kind of fun. Let's start the video and drink some beer. Hallador Laxness, Independent People. So I read this book just before COVID happened. So it was like 2019, was 6 years in the past. God, that disturbs me. Considered to be one of the greatest books, like certainly the greatest book ever out of Iceland, but also like one of the great European novels of the 20th century. Copyright 1946. I don't know what to tell you about this book, except that it's boring for 150 pages, and then this disturbingly bloody scene happens, like shockingly violent. And then it boring again for 120 pages, and another shocking little incidents of insane violence. That's how I remember the book. It sort of takes you gently along. It's about a man, he's a sheep farmer in Iceland, and he wants to go his own way. He wants to be an independent person. He doesn't want to be a member of any union or any collective, and there are these moments of insane calamity. It's really a beautiful book. It's a hard book to read, but the enjoyment and the satisfaction you get once you have read this book, and like the final calamity of the climax of the book is exposed, yeah, you've read something fantastic. And, you know, some books really make you think about life. Life is really quite dull. Life is really quite boring. And there are these sort of cataclysmic moments of God damn, you know, the horror, the torture, the strife, the turmoil appears. And it makes you reflect upon all the dullness. Like, God, I've been living 3-4 years of complacent dullness. And all of a sudden, the calamity that I have to deal with. I really do love this book, and I'm going to reread it one day, and I'm going to really apply myself to making a good video, because it's dear to my heart, this book. I should probably read it again before making such grand statements. But I cheated a little bit on shelf tour number 4, and I talked about this one already. So if you want to know anything, I don't really know anything about this book because I haven't read it, but I talked about it at the end of shelf tour number 4. Maybe watch that video after you watch this one. There you go. How Green Was My Valley, Richard Llewellyn. New Westminster Public Library Book Club with the library. I didn't steal it. For whatever reason, this was a part of their book club. And when the library decides something's going to be a book club book, they buy 30 editions of it, which is ridiculous, because show me a book club in New Westminster, British Columbia with 30 active members. Like fuck, No fucking way. How Green Was My Valley, Richard Llewellyn. What do I know about this book? Fuck all. How Green Was My Valley is Richard Llewellyn's best-selling, I don't give a shit, and timeless, well, anybody could say that, classic and basis of a beloved film. Well, that is a hardly complimentary statement to make about this book. Best-selling, timeless, basis of a film. I don't even want to continue reading the fucking blurb. Swearing a lot, must have drunk a lot already. Richard Llewellyn drew from his Welsh background to write How Green Was My Valley, his first book. I kind of always have a good feeling about authors' first books. I always feel that the first book was the one where they had all of their spark. Some authors got better, became more refined, but the first book was usually the one that they really strived to get all the juice into. He wrote 23 other novels in settings as varied. I don't care where the fucking books are set, man. I think this is on The Guardian's 1,000 books to read before you die, but like all of the nonsense I just glimpsed at on the back of this book, I have no curiosity about this book based on what I've read there. Let's try the first paragraph. I'm going to pack my 2 shirts with my other socks and my best suit in the little blue cloth my mother used to tie around her hair when she did the house, and I'm going from the valley. Yeah, I would keep going with that. I do like that. It's just, I guess they made this very pretty, you know, cutesy pie book, and they don't want to sell it as literature because that will scare away like all of the fake intellectuals that are very, very common in Canada these days. So that, you know, they try to sell it really like, oh, it's the greatest book in the world to read while you're eating apple pie and drinking white wine spritzers. It's the best book. Yeah. Penelope Lively, City of the Mind. This one I have trepidation. Penelope Lively wrote a book called Moon Tiger, which I think won or was shortlisted for the Booker Award. And Moon Tiger, a book I love. It was actually one of the very first videos that I ever made. My original videos were pretty rough, so I would like to reread the book again and make another video because it really deserves it. Like Moon Tiger, love it, love it. Which makes me really worry about this one because, you know, when you love a book so much and that's the only book you've ever read from the author, like I don't know what else Penelope Lively ever wrote. But I've got this. Very, very often, any author has their one greatest book, and if you happen to read that one book first before any of the others, all of the others tend to be disappointing. You know, Muriel Spark, best book, The Prime of Miss Jean Brodie, and I think I've read 4 or even 5 of her other novels, and none of them are as good. I shouldn't be shitting on this one too atrociously, as I seem to be doing, but I hate those disappointments so very much because it really feels like you're let down. And you've got to go back to the original book and read that one again and say, was it actually that good? And how is it possible that she wrote something as abysmal afterwards? Hopefully this one lives up to it. David Lodge, Changing Places. The plate glass... I'm drunk already, I've only had 2 beers. The plate glass concrete jungle of Euphoria State University, USA, and the damp red brick University of Rummage have an annual exchange scheme. Normally, the exchange passes without comment. But when Philip Swallow swaps with Professor Zapp, Z-A-P-P, the fates play a hand, and the 2 academics find themselves enmeshed in a spiraling involvement on opposite sides of the Atlantic. Nobody is immune. Students, colleagues, even wives are swapped. As the tension increases, finally, the cat is let out of the bag with flourish that surprises even the author himself. Even the author himself? Published 1975. Well, I think 1975 was a really weird, silly year for literature. So when all the silly stuff was happening in the world. I like the silly stuff. I like the Monty Python, and I like the wildness that was happening, the absurdity. I'm a fan of absurdity, or I used to be. You just get to an age where you're so goddamn dour and jaded that, you know, it's just hard to have fun when you're older. I think I know every single line of The Life of Brian. Like if I were watching The Life of Brian, I think I could probably repeat the vast majority of the dialogue in the film. But I wouldn't watch it. You know, like I have no desire to watch it again. Oh wow, another David Lodge. It's very interesting. I've got 2 books. Like I've never read any David Lodge. Never, nothing, 0. It's peculiar that I've got 2 books from the same author who I've never read. What? Small World. Now wait a minute. Philip Swallow swaps with Professor Zapp. And over here, Philip Swallow, Morris Zapp, Perez McGarrigle, and lovely Angelica, the jet-propelled academics, are on the move, in the air, on the make, in Small World. So this is a sequel to this? Well, it must be. It's the same characters. Same cover artist. Well, 1984, 9 years after the original. Well, that's, I didn't realize that I had the first one and the second one. You know, these shelf tours are a little bit depressing for me because it's like the majority of the books I have on my shelves are unread. It just makes me realize how much reading I've got to do. Even just like the stuff I've got on my shelves, like not even the stuff that I've got lists and all of the, you know, all of the great books that everybody's been recommending to me in the comments below. Please like and subscribe and leave a comment and tell me which books you would like me to read. I've got so many goddamn books to read. Oh well, probably the world's greatest problem to have, right? The Dead School by Patrick McCabe. Oh, this is on my TBR for 2025, so I'm definitely going to be reading this one soon. I read The Butcher Boy and just loved it. And I read that a long time ago. I read that when I was in Ottawa. And for me, that's like, you know, another man. And if I loved it back then, well, who knows? Yeah, looking forward to reading this one. And I'm going to be reading it soon, this year. So that's nice. Absolute Beginners. I think I've talked about this one a few times with the massive butt plug on the cover. Not a butt plug, it's a nose. I know what it is. Don't tell me. I know a butt plug when I see one. Absolute Beginners by Colin McGuinness. Now a movie with David Bowie. It's awful, isn't it, when they just have to try to sell it that way? You may not like reading, and you may, even though it's quite a short little book that's not going to take you hardly any time to read, if that doesn't persuade you to read some literature, you lazy, addle-headed fuck, there's a movie with David Bowie, so maybe go out and see the movie, go to the bookstore and buy the book, and after that you're on your own, because we've got your money by that point. It is really short, 200 pages. Now this one is on a list, somewhere, somehow. But it troubles me because this book is the second one in a trilogy. I don't just want to read the second book. I want to read the entire trilogy. I think sometimes as readers, we're a little bit cavalier about the authors. Like, we may like authors, and I certainly do enjoy all of the author gossip. Who was having a little war with who got drunk at the poetry reading. I love that stuff. But I think sometimes we need to be a little bit more respectful when it comes to an author. This guy, McGuinness, if he wrote a trilogy, let's respect the trilogy and read all of it, 1, 2, 3, and soak it in. And if we decide that the second one is the best one, okay, that's fine, we do that afterwards. But for me, only to be reading the second of the trilogy really rubs me the wrong way. And I'm not gonna do it. I'm gonna read part 1, and then part 2, and part 3. I've got to find them, and that's not going to be easy to do, because I want to respect his vision as an author, as someone who said, I don't just want to write one novel, I want to write a trilogy. These works of art are not easy to create. If they were, everyone would do it, and they would have no value. But it takes someone such singular focus and dedication and practice. Like, we've got to respect the commitment that they've made in their lives to do that, which is all by way of saying that I need to find part 1 and 3 before I give that one a chance. All right, let's move a little bit quicker because I'm drunk and I've got a lot of books to get through. David Malouf, Remembering Babylon. This is on my 2025 TBR, so I'll be talking about this one shortly. Somerset Maugham, The Razor's Edge. Have to reread this one. Love Somerset Maugham, like one of the great British authors. I remember this book being a lot longer because I think when I read it the first time, I read a hardcover version, so it made it feel like it was really, so I'm very surprised how slender this book is. Kind of a peculiar cover. Maybe I don't remember what this book is actually about. Elliot, the arch snob, but also the kindest of men. Isabel, considered to be entertaining, gracious and tactful. Gray, the quintessence of the regular guy. Suzanne, shrewd, roving, and friendly. Roving. Sophie, lost, wanton, with a vicious attractiveness about her. And finally Larry, so hard and so trustful, lost in the world's confusion. Their story, one of Somerset Maugham's best, encompasses the pain, passion, and poignancy of life itself. Somerset Maugham, theatre. Why do I have this? I probably just picked it up for $1 because I love Somerset Maugham. theatre. Is that a proper good book that I've heard of? Julia Lambert is in her prime, the greatest actress in England. On stage, she is a true professional in full possession of her emotions. Off stage, however, she is bored with her husband, less disciplined about her behavior. She is at first amused by the attentions of a shy but ambitious young fan, then thrilled by his persistence, and at last wildly but dangerously in love. There he is, there's the man. He was a spy, you know. So long, see you tomorrow. I did a review of this one, and someone has been writing to me recently to tell me that they read this book based on my recommendation. Thank you so much. That's what my channel's all about. I want to recommend great books, and if you happen to read them based on my recommendation, I feel like I'm doing the world's best work. So thank you. Please, more people read this book. This is a real American classic. It's so short. You've really got to keep yourself turned on to read this book because it's, God damn, it's 11:30. Fucking hell. Read this. The Cement Garden, E. McEwen. I made a review of this one that was over 18 only because this book is dirty. It's filthy. And pretty good too. Henry Miller, Tropic of Cancer. I did a big review of this one, a really, really big review. I would say this book is the book that has influenced me personally, my life, the most. I left Canada when I was 26 years old. I flew from Toronto to Lisbon on January the 2nd, 2000, after the big Y2K fiasco. Not a little bit of it was based on the fact that Henry Miller left America and went to Paris to become a writer. This book really motivated me to do the same thing. I didn't really turn out to be as successful as Henry Miller, but I'm still working on it. Well, I've screwed up the list somehow. Somerset Maugham of Human Bondage, just one of the greatest books you have to read. And that's it. It is absolutely one of the greatest books that you must have to read in your life to qualify as a human being. Wouldn't it be nice if we had like some qualification or some ranking scale, you know, to rank you emotionally, intellectually as a real human being? You've got to read a certain number of selected literature. You've got to do a certain amount of good deeds, unselfish with your money, depending on how much you have. And you get to get a ranking on the altruistic human being table. What's this? Far Tortuga, Peter Matheson. Who sent me this? Someone sent me this. Who sent me this? John? John, did you send me this? He sent me a box full of books one day. Really, a box full of. He said, I've just got too many goddamn books in my house, so here you go. I imagine he must have selected them with some consideration for the fact that I do love literature. Anyway, there's a book. You could send me books. You could also send money and naked photos. You could. I'm not saying, but, you know, I'll look at them. Javier Marias, A Heart So White. God, love it. I wanted to do a review of this book because he just died recently, but I read it once and I want to read it again to really make a loving, beautiful review of this book because it deserves it. Frederick Manning, The Middle Parts of Fortune. This was on my 2024 TBR list, and I never made a video of this one because I don't know enough about the First World War to really talk about it with any kind of knowledge. However, I know so much more having read this book because a lot of it is drudge work, marching, carrying equipment from one location to another, and they hate it, but at least they're not going up the line. But it's still drudgery, back and forth, carrying, oh, we've got to bring it over there now, we've got to march and carry this equipment over there, and eventually they do go on the line. Death in Venice, Thomas Mann. That really disturbs me. Okay, I buy all my books secondhand. It cost me just $1, but like I do have some consideration for aesthetics, I have to say. And I'm not crazy about this color scheme. But I will read it. I'll read everything. If I live to be 2,000 years old. Wow, okay, I did a review of these books. This is a series by Yukio Mishima. All of these, isn't it a shame? You know, those are the same and this one is peculiar. Oh well, what can you do? So this series is called The Sea of Fertility, and in order of that they should be read in. So the first one is Spring Snow. Second one is Runaway Horses. The third one is The Temple of Dawn. And the last one is The Decay of the Angel. This is really a very, very excellent series of literature, which is about Yukio Mishima's concept of how he felt Japan as a nation and a society how they were doing, where they were going, how he felt that the country was being degraded into modernity. And I read them back to back to back. So I read the entire series together, which, again, it's about respecting the author and respecting their vision. Like if I read this one, and 1 or 2 years later I read that one, and then a couple of years after that I read that one, I'm not going to feel the same connection, because in this book we have the same central character. He's a teenager, then he's in his 20s, and then he's in his 30s, and then he's in his 40s or 50s. His story and his relationship with these characters vary significantly with one character repeatedly, and how the narrator changes, and how he sees other people changing. That's Mishima's vision of Japanese society by the time that the final novel concludes. And actually, I believe that when he finished this book, a few months later he committed suicide in such a dramatic way that he did, if you know that story. This was the last book he ever wrote, and it perhaps drove him to commit the crazy act of suicide that he performed. If you're a fan of Japanese literature, or if you're Japanese and you're not afraid to take a hard look at society, through Mishima's eyes anyway, yeah, this beautiful, beautiful series. I've been grabbing the books in the wrong order. Quiet Days and Clichy by Henry Miller. This is not a great book. This book is actually, all of the extra bits that were cut out of Tropic of Cancer are in here. Like, these are all the leftover pieces that were good, but not good enough to get into Tropic of Cancer. And normally I wouldn't even keep this book because I don't rate it very highly, but there's one very special, strange thing in this book that is because as a bookmark, I have this 100 Socialistica Federativna Republika Yugoslavia. And what is this? This is like 100 carbovinates. Carbovinates? Dinari. Dinari. Reminds me of who gave me this book. A teacher who was from the former Yugoslavia. I don't know if she even realized that this was in here, but you know, this money is really quite worthless except in nostalgia factor. But just the fact that it's in here reminds me where this book came from, who gave it to me. Yugoslavia doesn't exist anymore, but the book does. All right, we have this monster, A Fine Balance by Rohinton Mistry. This book is so goddamn commonplace, not just in the charity shops, but also like in these free libraries. So I'm sure I can find a much better copy than this. However, who gives a shit? 600 pages, good Christ. With a compassionate realism and narrative sweep that recall the work of Charles Dickens, who I don't like. This magnificent novel captures all the cruelty and corruption, dignity and heroism of India. The time is 1975. The place is an unnamed city by the sea. The government has just declared a state of emergency in whose upheavals 4 strangers, a spirited widow, a young student uprooted from his idyllic hill station, and 2 tailors who fled the caste violence of their native village will be thrust together. A little good thrusting always makes a good novel. Forced to share one cramped apartment and an uncertain future. I picked it up from one of those charity libraries, and I will read it one day because it is considered one of the great books. It won a lot of accolades. It might have been one of those diversity quotients, like, oh, now we're gonna push Indian literature because they're not white. You know, sometimes certain books are popular with popular audiences, and I turn my nose up, but you do have to remember that some publishing company saw merit, enough readers loved it enough that it would generate, you know, the popularity that it would eventually receive. La-di-da. Oh, we get to Moravia now. Moravia, Ghost at Noon. With this cover by Salvador Dali. I read it a long time ago, and I'm going to read it again and make a video of this. Exactly the same for this Moravia as well. Boredom, Alberto Moravia, by this company that makes these beautiful covers. Same thing. Love Alberto Moravia. We'll read this one again, and we'll make a video of it one day because there's something so beautiful and realistic, sexually motivated about Italian literature. Like somehow in American literature, that sexual undercurrent that is so commonplace in Italy, always. You go to a job interview, there's a little sexual undercurrent. You go to work at a new company, you go to, you know, a gym, there's just always a little sexual undercurrent constantly in life. I felt that all the time when I was in Hungary. It was always there, it was always present, not just in me, but in everyone. There was always sexual undercurrent to society, which I felt was quite natural, but I don't feel it here in North America. I feel people here are just eunuchs. Like, all they care about is making money. I don't see anyone who's really out there, like, getting some fun action. Like, you would see it on their face. They would be expressing joy. I never feel that way in Canada. I never feel this. Like, I just went to university for 3 years. Okay, I'm older, and I'm not saying that I was attracted to the other students, but, like, I never felt that there was any underlying sexual tension whatsoever. It was like being in a class full of children who hadn't reached that puberty yet. Nobody seemed interested whatsoever. I don't feel any sexual energy in this country. It's like everybody's decided that they want to watch cartoons and smoke weed and get drunk and make money and don't talk about the dirty stuff. You know, we've got our porn for that. I feel that way. Tell me, leave a comment if you disagree. Moravia, 1934, did a big review of this one. Loved it, loved it. No, I didn't love it. I thought it was okay, but even being okay, it's still better than a lot of other writers. Moravia, 2 women. This is on my 2025 TBR, so I'll be reading this shortly. Toni Morrison's Sula. I've only read, what's the famous one? And it was so beloved, and it was so violent, like really so heart-wrenchingly violent that I shudder to read another Toni Morrison. And that's the end of shelf number 5. If you want to see the other shelf videos immediately, please support me on Patreon, and they're there. Patreon isn't really designed very well. Like, I don't know how I can categorize my videos so I can say, all right, here's the shelf videos, here's the list videos, here's the that, here's the that. Like, all the videos, you just have to keep scrolling. If you keep scrolling, you'll find all the jewels and the gems, and all the photos I've probably forgotten about, and all the very nasty comments I've made in my weekly blog. A lot of nasty comments. I'm gonna do the other one right away, even though it's 11:47 at night, because I've got to get these shelf videos made before Matthew gets here. So I've got some bitchin' literature on my shelves, really. Like, who's really got some crazy books like this on their shelves? Maybe you do. Hopefully you do, because I know a lot of people have been like, Grant, you've got to read this, you've got to read this, and a lot of the times, like, these are books I've never heard of. So there's a lot of people out there with some very refined taste in literature. Thank you for watching. Goddamn. All right, got to make the next one. Toot sweet. It's amazing. You know, I find these books for $1 in a charity shop. Like, someone bought it and said, fuck that, give it away, don't need that. You want this? No, all right, I gotta take it to the goddamn charity shop. Or, you know, some clever person died and the relatives just said, oh, you know, clever uncle died and left a room full of books. I guess we just need to crate all these to the goddamn charity shop. Hi, my uncle died. Are you going to take all this junk from us? Yeah, we take everything. All right, put it over there. Oh, well. I do feel really bad going into these shops, though. They're such little dungeons of apathy and pettiness. But I found this. Beer.